Okay, continuing on in American Miscellany, this is actually our fifth essay, New England Liberality. So just after John Hancock, we have an essay on page 20 on New England Liberality, Schools and Institutions. We have a little lovely quote here to start from William Penn. "For learning be liberal, spare no cost, for by such parsimony all is lost that is saved. But let it be useful knowledge, such as is consistent with truth and godliness." Good old William Penn giving us that quote. All right, the first settlers of New England are justly entitled to a large share of the credit for having given an impulse to the cause of popular education. In the year 1668, a document was published by order of the Governor and Council of Massachusetts, and addressed to the elders and ministers of every town, in which paper was set forth an earnest desire for the moral and religious instruction of the people, and an appeal to those to whom the instrument was directed to examine whether the education of youth in the English language was attended to. From the time of the Winthrop, Mather, and their associates, who labored most zealously in this field of usefulness, to the present period, New England has devoted her attention to the promotion of knowledge, and in the industry, integrity, and frugality of her children, beholds now the brilliant results of her perseverance. When we consider that the tide of emigration, which is sweeping before it the forests of the West, takes its rise in the eastern section of the United States and bears upon its bosom the elements of enrichment, that it is composed in a great degree of those who have been enabled there to obtain the rudiments of learning, the first principles of valuable information, ought we not to be grateful to those who have toiled, and feel it to be both a privilege and a duty to acknowledge with gratitude the many princely donations of the sons of pilgrims to the cause of education, in order to keep the fountain well supplied, pure and transparent for the future use? When proper respect is thus paid to such as are possessed of those liberal talents and enlightened views which constitute true greatness, it must evidently be productive of the happiest consequences, especially to youth, whose minds are so open to impressions, and on whom the force of example acts with an important effect that cannot fail of producing a corresponding good, exciting a laudable emulation, leading their views from groveling pursuits to a search after and love of virtue, knowledge, and the various qualities which strengthen society, brighten the social links which bind man to his fellow man, and so preeminently distinguishes the members of a civilized, intelligent community from the rude and unenlightened nations of countries where education and its train of blessings has never been or are but imperfectly known. There is something peculiarly pleasing and impressive in the contemplation of great and good characters. In those who justly claim the appellation, we view, we admire, and feel an irresistible longing to be like them, to imitate their virtues, and to practice their precepts. We feel ourselves better and destined to an advancement in knowledge and strength from the proud consciousness of partaking their natures, and possessing, however humble, a spark of that celestial intellectual fire which illumines so brilliantly their minds and emanates from one common source, the great and inexhaustible fountain of light and goodness. It is universally admitted that ignorance is the fruitful source of crime and misery. This fact is sufficient, we should imagine, to arouse the most profound attention and create the deepest anxiety in the bosom of every philanthropist. The necessity of educating the people of a free government is admitted on every side, and yet through a culpable inertness in many states of the Union, on the part of those whose duty it is to move forward on this momentous subject, an immense portion of those into whose hands the destinies of this last sanctuary of freedom must be delivered, is left in total darkness, and wholly unacquainted with the information necessary to the formation of valuable citizens. The cause of freedom, the tranquility of our country, the present happiness and future prosperity of millions demand activity, and exhort the people of the United States to unite in a crusade against ignorance. a crusade in which every true knight who rallies under the holy standard can lay the flattering unction to his heart that he is the champion of the causes of truth and the disenthrallment of the human mind from the most debasing species of servitude. Let the watchword be, in the ever-vigilant camp of the faithful, liberty and education. We have been led into this train of reflection by perusing in the public prints from time to time accounts of the various munificent individual donations of the wealthy, patriotic, and benevolent citizens of Boston in support of his institutions for moral, religious, and literary purposes by continuing unbated from year to year. We'll quickly read the footnote there. Boston has been called the literary emporium of the Western world, and perhaps justly, for it is a fact that a greater portion of men distinguished for acquisitions of this nature have arisen in this city and the vicinity than in any other part of the United States. Among the most recent, we notice the donations of Honorable Abbot Lawrence to Harvard College, amounting to $50,000. Oh my God, rich. Honorable David Sears has also given $10,000 to the same institution. Wait a minute, David Sears. Who wrote this book? Let's see, we've got... Robert Sears. Okay, Robert Sears wrote the book, and we've got a donation here from an Honorable David Sears, $10,000, and a like sum to AMherst College, by the way. We do have another footnote here. Let's go ahead and read that. $5,000 to Harvard College for the erection of an observatory tower, now known as the Sears Tower. In this tower is placed the great telescope, the gift of Boston citizens, and from it are dated all the scientific reports of the observers, Messrs. G and G.T. Bond. $5,000 to create a fund, the income of which is to be appropriated to the support of the observers and to other purposes of science. $10,000 to Amherst College to establish a foundation and an accumulating fund for the advancement of literature and science, the income to be applied as the trustees in their discretion may vote the proper objects. The other gentlemen mentioned have also been equally liberal in various ways with their own views of utility and merit an equally distinguished notice. Fair enough. All right. Amos Lawrence, Esquire, Honorable Thomas H. Perkins, William Appleton, Esquire, and many other gentlemen of well-known liberality in Massachusetts have contributed of their abundance to the advancement of learning. Such instances of enlightened liberality are to be highly commended and constitute one of the noblest features of New England good sense and feeling. We might furnish similar accounts of others whose coffers are not closed, but who are ever on the giving hand, encouraging talent, promoting industry, and fostering the fine arts, thus setting a most noble and praiseworthy example to the wealthy men of other cities, which we could wish were more generally imitated. These benevolent and useful men, descendants of the noblest ancestry ever possessed by any people, citizens of the mother state of New England, the very birthplace and cradle of American freedom, possess the principles of that most remarkable body of men, perhaps, which the world has ever produced. They well know that knowledge is an all-powerful engine to preserve their civil and religious rights and transmit them to posterity. That's it. They therefore very early laid the foundations of those free schools of which all the sons and daughters of New England are justly proud, exclusive of infant and Sabbath school scholars. About a quarter part of the population of Boston is kept at school throughout the year, at an annual expense of $200,000. Since the year 1800, not less than $2 million have been appropriated to the cause of education by the citizens of Boston. This is good evidence that the pilgrim spirit has not yet fled. Second footnote here. Our second footnote says a celebrated foreign writer, in no wise partial to the Puritans. They were men whose minds had derived a peculiar character from the daily contemplation of superior beings and eternal interests. Not content with acknowledging in general terms an overruling providence, they habitually ascribed every event to the will of the great being, for whose power nothing was too vast, and for whose inspection nothing was too minute. To know him, to serve him, to enjoy him, was with them the great end of their existence. They rejected with contempt the ceremonious homage to which other sects substituted for the homage of the soul. On the rich and the eloquent, on nobles and priests, they looked down with contempt, for they esteemed themselves rich in a more precious treasure, and eloquent in a more sublime language, nobles by the right of an earlier creation, and priests by the imposition of a mightier hand. That's by H. Lee, Esquire of Boston. Okay, so getting back to our essay here. Under no system but Christianity does true liberty exist. Okay. Or are human rights properly respected? By it, the existence of man is invested with dignity and importance. By this leveling and exalting system, every human being, in whatever circumstance of degradation he may be placed, stands on an equality with the mightiest potentate on earth, and to his fate is attached a mysterious and inconceivable importance. We are well aware that all political demagogues, to whatever party or profession they may belong, are, as it may naturally be supposed, secretly, if not openly, opposed to popular education. And they are so because an ignorant, idle, and immoral population are more easily managed to suit the purposes of a demagogue than an enlightened and well-principled one. Can we read that again? I really like that paragraph. We are well aware that all political demagogues, to whatever party or profession they may belong, are, as it may naturally be supposed, secretly, if not openly, opposed to popular education. And they are so because an ignorant, idle, and immoral population are more easily managed to suit the purposes of a demagogue than an enlightened and well-principled one. In a late article on the subject of education by one of our ablest and most industrious writers, H. Lee, Esquire of Boston, particularly on statistics, we find the following remarks. As respects New England, however, it will be universally admitted, we think, that none of its states have ever fallen into so low a condition that the mass of its citizens, under whatever party banners they may be enlisted, would allow their political leaders to break down a system which affords every individual an opportunity of obtaining an education at the public expense, and consequently free of charge to the poorest classes. It is true that even in Massachusetts, where education from the most elementary to the highest branches of instruction has been most liberally encouraged, not by the state, but by individuals, the demagogues belonging to the profession of the politician, as well as the demagogues in all other vocations of life, have not been wanting in their wishes and exertions to hinder an advancement in popular education, and even to lower its present standard, but they have never had the countenance of any considerable portion of either of the two predominating political parties. On the distribution of the surplus revenue of the United States some few years since, an effort was made by the friends of popular education, in and out of the legislature, to lay aside the share coming to Massachusetts amounting to $1,047,620 as a fund, the income from which to be applied to the promotion of education, but it failed. In truth, of the vast sums which, for half a century and more, have been appropriated for the support of education and for its advancement, by far the largest portion has arisen from the benefactions of charitable and munificent individuals. As a state, considering that the annual income of its inhabitants is much greater than the people of any other state of equal number of persons, we have done less for the promotion of education than New York and several other members of the Union. And, but for the unexampled generosity of individuals, the institutions for instruction in the higher branches of education, leaning as they have done almost wholly on the bestowments of individuals for support, must, without that private aid, have been in very low condition compared with their existing one. So in regard to charitable establishments, they mainly owe their origin and support to the well-considered and wisely bestowed contributions of individuals, 9/10 of which, perhaps, may have come from the citizens of Boston. Although the legislature of Massachusetts, and especially within the last 50 years, has not shown so enlightened and liberal a disposition as their predecessors have done, considering the vast accession to the property of its inhabitants, in regard to popular education, in consequence of the hindrances thrown in the way of the advocates of education by the demagogues of both parties, nevertheless, it is to be hoped that the time has arrived when the resistance made by the demagogues in the legislature and elsewhere to an advancement in the quality of schools and in the qualification of the teachers will be discountenanced and overcome by influential men of all parties. Such will certainly be the conduct of reflecting men, for what we ask is there so necessary to the prosperity, self-respect, and to the general welfare of the mass of the people as the advantages derivable from education. Upon this all-important subject of education, there are the following just and timely remarks in Governor Briggs's latest address to the legislature. "I cannot," says this intelligent and excellent magistrate, "forbear to present to your earnest consideration, as I have heretofore presented to the consideration of your predecessors, the important subject of popular education. This subject should be ever present with the people of the Commonwealth and with their legislature. Neither can neglect it without bringing a just reproach upon themselves and doing injustice to the rising generation. In the order of providence, to each succeeding generation of men is committed the education of the children. This is a high and sacred duty. No generation can perform it but once. It cannot be omitted without guilt. The people of Massachusetts cannot forget, and ought not to forget, that under Providence the important element of her prosperity has been the ceaseless, diversified, and persevering industry of her population. To labor, contrived by the heads and performed by the hands of her freemen, under the control and influence of her moral, religious, and free institutions, she mainly owes her present character and standing among the states of this confederacy. On this she must rely for her future weal and success. Our people regard all honest employment as honorable, and look upon idleness among the rich or the poor as the prolific parent of vice. But labor, to be successful, must be intelligent. The wellspring of this intelligence is, and always must be found, for the great mass of our population in the district schoolhouse. In order to overcome in some degree the prejudice which, it is conceived, usually exists on the part of the uneducated portion of the country against opinions of leading men in the educated states, we cite the following editorial remarks from a respectable journal published in Richmond, Virginia. The reason of the eminent success and the wonderful manifestations of intellectual and moral power which the New England states are exhibiting on the rest of the states, and on the general welfare, consists in these two things. Every child must be educated and placed on the same footing while receiving his education, and every honorable occupation is held in like esteem. Every honorable occupation is held in like esteem. The consequence of this state of things, that all men are mentally fit for all pursuits to which their genius applies, and talent is not uselessly employed. This state of things will make any people rich and powerful. If a man has genius for the intricacies of mechanism, he will not nor cannot distinguish himself or thrive as a farmer, lawyer, doctor, or merchant. By reversing the system of things here as they exist in New England, we are struggling against the Almighty himself, and of course we cannot succeed. Our policy is wrong, and the sooner we right it, the better. If, as alleged by this Virginia writer, the prosperity of New England is justly attributable to the advantages derived from a system of general education, it would seem to follow that the poverty of Virginia is owing to the people of that Commonwealth having, as asserted by the editor, acted upon the reverse of the New England system. Our policy, says this intelligent writer, is wrong, and the sooner we write it, the better. We are struggling against the Almighty himself, and of course we cannot succeed. These extracts, carefully written by their judicious author, are well worthy of a deep and prayerful consideration by men of all classes and political creeds. Nothing can be more true than the sentiments therein urged. What are any people without the advantages of education? Ignorance, indigence, and pauperism, with their usual concomitants and consequences, will continue to be among their most prominent characteristics. Let public opinion, therefore, at once, through the influence of the press, the pulpit, and public lectures, be aroused to the necessity of the education of children. Let the instruction of a child be considered the paramount duty of a good citizen. And then public sentiment will act much more powerfully to produce the results desired than the staff of the police officer. Public opinion is the best balance wheel of the machinery of a society constituted as that in which we live. It must be by promulgating among the mass the sentiment of the necessity of education, by arousing their attention to its value, by demonstrating its beneficial results, as not only the best check on the increase of crime and the prevention of pauperism, but also the promoter of public order and private happiness, that we can hope to have education generally diffused. So soon as the people are convinced, we shall secure the brilliant object which all should desire to be effected. To produce great results must be the work of time. The past labors of the people are the best evidence of their devotion to the advancement of learning, and give great hope that the same system of education which has originated in the New England states will become universal, and lay with a broad and deep foundation on which the pyramid of the Republic's glory and security may rise, and remain an imperishable monument to the wisdom of her statesmen.